The process, managing action. You can train yourself to be faster, more responsive, more proactive, and more focused in knowledge work. You can think more effectively and manage the results with more ease and control. You can minimize the loose ends across the whole spectrum of your work life and personal life and get a lot more done with less effort. And you can make front-end decision-making about all the stuff you collect and create a standard operating procedure for living and working in this new millennium. Before you can achieve any of that, though, you'll need to get in the habit of keeping nothing on your mind. And the way to do that is not by managing time, managing information, or managing priorities. Instead, the key to managing all your stuff is managing your actions. Managing action is the prime challenge. What you do with your time, what you do with information, and what you do with your focus relative to your priorities, those are the real options to which you must allocate your limited resources. The real issue is how to make appropriate choices about what to do at any point in time. The real issue is how we manage actions. That may sound obvious. However, it might amaze you to discover how many next actions for how many projects and commitments remain undetermined by most people. It's extremely difficult to manage actions you haven't identified or decided on. Most people have dozens of things that they need to do to make progress on many fronts, but they don't yet know what they are. And the common complaint that I don't have time to, you fill in the blank, is understandable because many projects seem overwhelming, and are overwhelming because you can't do a project at all. You can only do an action related to it. Many actions require only a minute or two to move a project forward. In coaching thousands of professionals, I've found that lack of time is not the major issue for them. The real problem is a lack of clarity and definition about what a project really is and what the associated next action steps required are. The value of a bottom-up approach. I've discovered over the years the practical value of working on personal productivity improvement from the bottom up, starting with the most mundane ground floor level of current activity and commitments. Getting current on and in control of what's in your in-basket and on your mind right now, and incorporating practices that can help you stay that way, will provide the best means of broadening your horizons. A creative, buoyant energy will be unleashed. Many executives I've worked with during the day to clear the decks of their mundane stuff have spent the evening having a stream of ideas and visions about their company and their future. This happens as an automatic consequence of unsticking their workflow. Horizontal and vertical action management. You need to control commitments, projects, and actions in two ways, horizontally and vertically. Horizontal control maintains coherence across all the activities in which you are involved. Imagine your psyche constantly scanning your environment like police radar. It may land on any of 1,000 different items that invite or demand your attention during any 24-hour period. The drugstore, the housekeeper, your Aunt Martha. Vertical control, in contrast, manages thinking up and down the track of individual topics and projects. For example, your inner police radar lands on your next vacation as you and your spouse talk about it over dinner, where and when you'll go and what you'll do and so on. This is project planning in the broad sense. It's focusing in on a single endeavor, situation, or person and fleshing out whatever ideas, details, priorities, and sequences of events may be required for you to handle it. The goal for managing horizontally and vertically is the same: to get things off your mind and get things done. The major change: getting it all out of your head. There is no real way to achieve the kind of relaxed control I'm promising if you keep things only in your head. As you'll discover, the individual behaviors described in this program are things you're already doing. The big difference between what I do and what others do is that I capture and organize 100% of my stuff in and with objective tools at hand, not in my mind. And that applies to everything, little or big, personal or professional, urgent or not. I'm sure that at some time or other you've gotten to a place in a project or in your life where you just had to sit down and make a list. If so, you have a reference point for what I'm talking about. Most people, however, do that kind of list-making drill only when the confusion gets too unbearable and they just have to do something about it. They usually make a list only about the specific area that's bugging them. But if you made that kind of review a characteristic of your ongoing life and work style, and you maintained it across all areas of your life, you'd be practicing the kind of black belt management style I'm describing. I try to make intuitive choices based on my options instead of trying to think about what those options are. I need to have thought about all that already and capture the results in a trusted way. I don't want to waste time thinking about things more than once. That's an inefficient use of creative energy and a source of frustration and stress. And you can't fudge this thinking. Your mind will keep working on anything that's still in that undecided state. But there's a limit to how much unresolved stuff it can contain before it blows a fuse. The short-term memory part of your mind, the part that tends to hold all of the incomplete, undecided, and unorganized stuff, functions much like RAM on a personal computer. Your conscious mind, like the computer screen, is a focusing tool, not a storage place. You can think about only 2 or 3 things at once. But the incomplete items are still being stored in the short-term memory space. And as with RAM, there's limited capacity. There's only so much stuff you can store in there and still have that part of your brain function at a high level. Most people walk around with their RAM bursting at the seams. They're constantly distracted, their focus disturbed by their own internal mental overload. There is no reason ever to have the same thought twice unless you like having that thought. For example, in the last few minutes, has your mind wandered off into some area that doesn't have anything to do with what you're listening to here? Probably. And most likely where your mind went was to some open loop, which is some incomplete situation that you have some investment in. All that situation did was rear up out of the RAM part of your brain and yell at you internally. And what did you do about it? Unless you wrote it down and put it in a trusted bucket that you know you'll review appropriately sometime soon, more than likely you worried about it. Not the most effective behavior. No progress was made, and tension was increased. The big problem is that your mind keeps reminding you of things when you can't do anything about them. It has no sense of past or future. That means as soon as you tell yourself that you need to do something, there's a part of you that thinks you should be doing that something all the time. Everything you've told yourself you ought to do, it thinks you should be doing right now. Frankly, as soon as you have 2 things to do stored in your RAM, you've generated personal failure because you can't do them both at the same time. Can you get rid of that kind of stress? You bet. The rest of this program will explain how.